Imagine an ordinary night. You are sitting in a familiar room, the light from a screen resting on your face, and everything around you still looks intact, still in place, still moving the way it is supposed to. But something inside you no longer feels where it belongs. You answer messages, finish your work, smile at the right moments, stay quiet at the right moments, show up where you need to show up. And yet beneath all of that, you still carry the feeling that you are standing outside your own life, as if you are not really living it, but watching it from behind a sheet of clear glass. That feeling is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is almost invisible, just a small delay in conversation, when everyone else is laughing and you need one extra second to understand what touched them. Sometimes it appears when you look back on a busy day and realize you did a lot, but did not really touch anything. You were there, but you were not inside it. Have you ever felt how strange it is that your own life can feel like someone else's house? Have you ever wondered how a person can move through the years so functional, so aware, so responsible, and still quietly feel like an outsider to it all? The hardest part is that this feeling is difficult to explain. If you are still working, still maintaining relationships, still living a relatively stable life, who would believe that inside you there is a whole landscape cut off from everything else? Who would believe that what exhausts you is not only pressure, but a long distance from your own lived experience? And because it is hard to explain, you become quieter, more doubtful of yourself, and you start asking whether you are simply too sensitive, too complicated, or asking too much from life. But maybe the truth is not that something is wrong with you. Maybe the truth is that you adapted for so long to the roles that were necessary that you lost the inner sense of belonging. And the paradox is that the most important insight only appears when you stop trying so hard to seem normal in ways that make other people comfortable. To reach that point, you first have to look directly at this feeling of standing outside, not as a defect, but as a signal. Most people think the feeling of being an outsider comes from not fitting into the environment, not finding the right community, or not being recognized properly. That is true, but only partly true. Because there are people who enter the right room, meet the right kind of people, do the kind of work they once believed would fit them, and still feel an unspoken distance. So where does that distance come from? Is it really distance from the world, or distance between you and the most alive part of yourself? Carl Jung pointed toward something uncomfortable but freeing, that much of psychological suffering does not begin when we are not accepted, but when we are forced to become someone in order to be accepted. In that sense, feeling like an outsider is not always a sign that you do not belong in the world. Sometimes it is a sign that you had to leave yourself in order to remain in that world. And when that adaptation lasts long enough, it no longer feels like a choice. It feels like personality. It feels like identity. It feels like you. That is what makes this so difficult to notice. You do not feel like you are performing. You only feel slightly distant, slightly blurred, slightly out of step with everything. Like an actor who has worn a costume for so long that they no longer remember the skin underneath it. You say sensible things, react in mature ways, build a version of yourself that functions well in shared reality. But inside, one part of you was never invited to participate. Are you living your life or only managing it? Are you feeling or only regulating your feelings well enough to keep other people comfortable? Existential philosophy reaches deeply into this. Kierkegaard wrote about despair not as a dramatic collapse, but as the condition of a person who cannot become themselves. Not because they have no self, but because they live too far from it. A person can still succeed, still be loved, still look fine, and still be in despair in that sense. Because the deepest despair is not always obvious pain. Sometimes It is only the long absence of what feels real. Only a life completed correctly, but not inhabited from within. And here is the most counterintuitive part. Feeling like an outsider is sometimes not because you are too different, but because you became too skilled at cutting away the parts that made you different. You learned to read the room faster than you learned to speak honestly. You learned to become understandable instead of truthful. You learned to maintain connection through compatibility, even when the price was your presence. And one day, you look around and realize you built a life that other people can understand, while you no longer recognize the one living it. What hurts more than that? Modern psychology might call this self-alienation, but the phrase is still too neat for the actual experience. Because this is not only about not knowing what you like or what you want. It is about the observing part of you growing larger, while the directly living part grows smaller. You become the interpreter of your own experience. Everything gets filtered through awareness, control, and self-monitoring. That creates a false kind of safety. But it also removes your sense of belonging. And when you no longer belong to your own experience, the world will naturally feel far away. Many people call that maturity. But maturity is not the sacrifice of inner aliveness in exchange for smooth functioning. That is only a refined form of splitting. A quiet default silence between the social self and the hidden self. Have you ever noticed yourself smiling in a moment that should have felt joyful, while also feeling that none of it was really touching you? Have you ever left a gathering that looked wonderful on paper, yet felt empty and drained inside? If you have, maybe you are not lacking connection. Maybe you are lacking presence. And that is where this becomes even deeper. Because once you begin living mainly through persona, through the functional mask Jung described, you start building identity from external feedback. You know who you are by how useful you are, how easy you are to be around, how different in acceptable ways, how admirable, how composed. But if all of that disappeared in an empty room, who would remain? If no one was looking, no one needed you, no one reflected you back to yourself, how clearly would you still feel your own existence? The question sounds philosophical, but for many people, it is a very real ache. There is one important micro-insight here. The feeling of being an outsider usually does not begin with exclusion. It begins when you watch yourself too closely in order to be accepted. When the child in you learns that spontaneity can create trouble, it replaces that spontaneity with refinement, correctness, and control. That is a smart strategy, and it is also a quiet cost. You do not disappear all at once. You only begin stepping back, very slowly, very politely, very hard to detect. The first outsider you become is an outsider to yourself. The second micro-insight is even more uncomfortable. You can become attached to the feeling of standing outside, not because it feels good, but because it gives you the illusion of safety. If you are always at the edge, you do not have to dissolve into anything deeply enough to get hurt. If you are always observing, you do not have to expose yourself. If you are always holding some inner distance, other people's chaos is less likely to swallow you. But what is the cost? The cost is that you never fully touch joy, love, meaning, or even the kind of grief that heals. Distance protects you, and it starves you. That is why many people are very self-aware, very psychologically informed, very good at naming their own patterns, yet still do not feel more alive. Awareness does not automatically bring you home. It only turns on the light in the room. You still have to walk in. You still have to stay with the feelings that were never processed, the needs that used to be called too much, the parts of you that are not elegant, not optimized, not easy to display. Understanding yourself is one step. Living with yourself is another. And there is an entire fear between those two steps. The third micro-insight is this. Feeling disconnected is not always a sign that you need to find the right people. Sometimes it is a sign that you are bringing the wrong frequency of yourself into every room. When you keep showing up as an edited version of yourself, the world can only respond to the edited version. Then you look at that response and feel that it doesn't reach you. Of course it doesn't. What is being touched was never your whole self. You cannot be found in places where you never truly arrived. That is the quietest tragedy of all. And this is where the climax arrives. If what makes you feel like an outsider is not mainly the world, but the split inside you, then where else can you keep running? How many times will you change jobs? How many times will you search for a new community? How many books will you read? How many patterns will you analyze? How many wounds will you name? How long will you keep being understood at the surface while your deeper self still stands outside the inner door? Could it be that what you are missing is not a place to belong, but the ability to remain with yourself without editing? Could it be that what you call alienation is really the pain of a neglected self? Could it be that what you need is not more identity, but less defense? Nietzsche wrote about becoming who you are as a task, not a gift simply handed to you. That means inner belonging does not arrive just because you understand yourself conceptually. It arrives when you stop betraying your quieter signals, when you stop laughing when nothing in you feels amused, when you stop agreeing just to preserve harmony, when you stop treating intuition as something that must ask permission from logic. Coming back is not dramatic. It is simply real, and it often begins with a discomfort you used to rush past. So the question is no longer why you feel like an outsider. The question is where you had to leave yourself in order to become acceptable. And once you see that point of departure, you cannot return to your old way of living innocently. That is not a loss. That is the beginning of waking up. The first change is not finding a place that instantly makes you feel at home. It is learning to stop abandoning yourself in very small moments. Because most inner estrangement is not created by major events, but by hundreds of moments when you see something, know something, feel something, and immediately push it aside to keep life smooth. Each time you do that, you send your nervous system a subtle message that your inner truth matters less than outer stability. Over time, you start believing that message. So the first practice sounds simple, but it carries real weight. Start respecting your inner signals before you fully understand them. Not every feeling is a command, but many feelings are data. A slight contraction around someone, a strange exhaustion after a conversation that seemed harmless, a small brightness when you do something no one rewards. Those signals are like tiny lights under snow, easy to miss if you only trust what can be explained right away. Are you waiting until you have enough reasons before you allow yourself to listen? Or more deeply, have you become so used to distrusting your inner world that you treat your own misalignment as the default flaw? When you begin respecting the signal first, something strange happens. You start becoming more present in your own experience, not as an inspector, but as a resident. Like returning to a house that has been locked for years and opening one window at a time, you do not repair everything immediately, but the air begins to change. This works not because it solves every social problem in your life, but because it repairs the root relationship between you and yourself. And when that relationship becomes less hostile, the world naturally feels less distant. The second change is accepting that belonging does not always feel comfortable at first. Many people confuse those two things. They think the right place, the right person, the right work will create immediate ease, as if body and mind will instantly relax. But sometimes, what is most true makes you tremble first, because it asks you to appear without the usual armor. It asks you to speak one sentence that is less polished, but more honest. It asks you to stay in a relationship without performing the version of yourself that is easiest to digest. That may make you feel exposed, but exposed does not always mean wrong. Sometimes it is the first sign that you have stopped freezing. Think of an arm that has fallen asleep for too long. When the blood begins to return, the first feeling is not comfort. It is pins and needles. Life returning is often less gentle than we imagine. In the same way, when you stop living through persona and begin living closer to your real self, you may feel clumsy, obvious, unfamiliar. You may wonder whether you are becoming harder to fit in with. But the more important question is this: are you becoming harder to fit in with, or are you simply betraying yourself less? In the beginning, those two can look almost identical. The third change involves stopping the habit of treating yourself like a project that must be optimized before you are worthy of belonging. This is the trap many self-aware people fall into. They turn the inner journey into a refined version of perfectionism. They believe that if they understand a little more, heal a little more, become more disciplined, become less wounded, they will finally feel connected. But that logic keeps them forever preparing to live. It is like someone standing at the edge of water, studying the temperature, the depth, the current, and the wind for so long that they forget belonging only begins when a foot touches the water. What heals here is allowing yourself to be present before you are perfect. Speaking a sentence that has not been polished, admitting a need that is not beautiful, leaving a relationship that keeps shrinking you, even if you cannot explain it in perfectly clean language. Doing this does not make you selfish. It makes you someone with inner boundaries, and boundaries create the possibility of real intimacy. They do not destroy it. You may think you need to be fully understood before you are allowed to be honest. But in reality, honesty is what makes understanding possible. If you want a more concrete practice, watch for the moments when you leave yourself during the day. Do not judge them, just notice them. The moment you laugh to lighten the atmosphere, even though something in you just closed. The moment you say you are fine because you do not want to explain. The moment you agree to one more task, one more meeting, one more role, while your body has already stepped back. If something in this video reaches you, maybe you will notice those moments earlier tonight, and maybe you will leave that realization in the comments, not for attention, but to see it clearly for the first time. The fourth change is understanding that you do not need to belong everywhere in order to stop being an outsider in your own life. That is a major release. Maybe you really are different from many environments. Maybe some spaces will always feel too shallow, too fast, or too loud for the structure of your mind. That is not automatically a problem. The problem only begins when you use that difference to conclude that there is no place for you in the world. Inner maturity sometimes means learning to let certain doors stay closed without turning them into a verdict on your worth. Not every room is home, and that does not mean you are homeless. When you stop forcing yourself to belong everywhere, you also stop panicking at every sign of mismatch. You begin to distinguish healthy solitude from self-abandonment, not belonging here from not belonging to yourself, the need to leave from the need to stay more deeply. That distinction changes everything. It is like adjusting the focus on a camera lens that has been blurred for years. The landscape does not instantly change, but for the first time, you can see its real edges, and inside that clarity, you breathe more easily. At this point, maybe the deepest thing that needs to be said is this: you do not feel like an outsider in your own life only because life excluded you. Many times, you feel that way because you learn to step out of your own experience in order to survive, to be loved, to be seen as reasonable, to avoid becoming a burden. That is not weakness. That is the intelligence of a mind that tried to protect you with every method it knew. But what once protected you may no longer be what helps you live. And here is the paradoxical truth. The feeling of being an outsider sometimes becomes strongest, not when you are in the wrong place, but when you are getting closer to your truth than ever before. Because at that point, every false connection, every well-fitted role, every easy agreement stops working as anesthesia. You begin to see the cost of being accepted without being touched. You begin to see that your old peace was actually a kind of functional numbness. And that realization hurts. It may hurt deeply. But this grief does not pull you away from yourself. It is leading you back. So maybe the goal is not to become someone who fully belongs to the world. Maybe the goal is simply to stop living like a stranger to your own feelings. To stop voting against intuition because it is inconvenient. To stop shrinking your truth to fit rooms that were never built for your soul. To stop confusing acceptance with real encounter. When you do that, something quiet begins to happen. You no longer need every place to confirm you. You begin carrying the feeling of home within you, and then, standing alone in certain rooms no longer feels like rejection. It is only reality. A reality that no longer insults you. A reality that no longer defines you. Because in the end, the opposite of being an outsider is not fitting in. It is presence. You are not lost from your life. You have only stood too long outside the inner door. Now you see it, and you can walk in.